We just got a price leak for Asus's ROG Ally, and if it's true, the Steam Deck is in some serious trouble. It looks like Best Buy, either accidentally or intentionally, because they wanted to build hype around the product, leaked the price on their website, and a Twitter user called Wicked Coombs got this screenshot. Now, I should say we don't 100% know that this leak is true, so take everything you're about to hear with a grain of salt, but it is at $699. That puts it at just $50 more than the most expensive Steam Deck, and the $700 ROG Ally and the $650 top-end Steam Deck both have 512 gigs of storage. So if this $700 starting price is true for the ROG Ally, they are going to do really well, because let's take a look at the spec sheets. Because if we look, the ROG Ally has better specs, at least on paper, than about every spec the Steam Deck has. So let's go over it real quick. They both have 7-inch screens, but the ROG Ally has a 16:9-inch screen and the Steam Deck has a 16:10. But the ROG Ally has a higher resolution screen at 1920x1080, which is kind of your regular 1080p, and the Steam Deck has a lower resolution 1280x800. The ROG Ally also gets brighter at a peak of 500 nits versus the Steam Deck's 400 nits, and the Ally has a higher refresh rate at 120 Hz versus the Steam Deck's 60 Hz. And as far as performance, Asus has been claiming that they were going to get anywhere from 50 to 100% better performance than the Steam Deck. And looking at AMD's graph for the Z1 Extreme that we think is in the Ally according to this leak, that looks like it could be the case. If we look at the chipsets, the Steam Deck is using AMD's older Zen 2 and RDNA 2, whereas the Ally is using AMD's brand new Z1 Extreme. And if we look at the teraflops on the graphics, the Steam Deck has 3.3 teraflops and the Ally has a potential 8.6. At least that's according to AMD's latest announcements. We don't have it third-party verified yet as far as I'm aware. But if that's true, that does put the Ally at over 100% better performance than the Steam Deck, and that is significant. And then if we compare the wattages, the Steam Deck goes up to 15 watts, whereas the ROG Ally can go up to 30 watts. And to handle that extra 15 watts of power that the Ally is capable of using, they also did a dual fan cooling solution versus the Steam Deck's single fan. And reportedly, from what I've seen on videos on YouTube and other people in the field who have used it, it sounds much quieter, which makes sense. If you have two fans, they can run in lower RPM. Two fans running slower is generally quieter than one fan running faster. Both of them use the same internal storage with the M.2 2230, and both have said that they're replaceable. The Steam Deck is obviously replaceable. I did it myself to this Steam Deck right here, and Asus is claiming you'll also be able to replace the internal storage in your Ally. As far as input differences, the Steam Deck actually comes out on top here because it has two trackpads, one for each thumb, and it has an extra rear button. These ones right here, kind of the L5, R5 buttons. So that could be useful for some people. Definitely, I know a lot of people like the trackpads, so that could be a negative for the Ally. One huge win that the Ally has over the Steam Deck is it's capable of using Asus's external GPUs, and those can go up to a 4090. And yeah, they're really expensive. I mean, the whole external GPU enclosure has never been a very cost-effective method, even though I did it because I wanted it at one point. Having the ability to use that, if you're someone who wants to do it, that would make using the Ally as your only PC a much more viable option, because you could plug it in when you're at home and you need more power and you're video editing or 3D rendering or gaming on a desktop or whatever. That would give you the ability to have that power when you need it, and that's huge. And the last, and what could be the most important difference between the two, is that the Steam Deck is running SteamOS via Linux, which is a custom software made by Valve, whereas the Ally is going to be running Windows. Now, both camps have their pros and cons, so we'll have to see which one shakes out, with Windows having a lot better native support of a ton of things, but then also generally being less optimized. So I'm curious to see how this plays out. Asus will have to do a lot of legwork in making Windows work well on their handheld, but if they can do it, that's going to be a huge benefit for them. And just on a personal note for myself, if the ROG Ally is seriously starting at $700, I'm going to buy one right out of the gate. So if the ROG Ally comes out and it truly is $700, that is going to be extremely price competitive, at least with the top end of the Steam Deck. But what about the bottom end? I'm someone who bought the $400 Steam Deck, that's what this is right here, and then I upgraded the internal storage myself from the starting 64 gigs to 512, and that cost $50. and then I slotted in a 0.5 terabyte SD card, and that costs another 50 bucks. So now I have a terabyte of storage in here for about $500. And I know some people, the $400 price range was just at the top of their budget of what they wanted to spend on a gaming device, and then maybe throw in an extra 50 bucks for an SD card. And so it might not matter to some people that the ROG Ally is better in a lot of ways. If it starts at $700, that might just put it outside of people's price range, because that's getting close to double what the budget version of the Steam Deck was. But that being said, if you're someone who has the $700, at least on paper, the ROG Ally looks better in almost every way. And the biggest caveat for me being the difference between SteamOS and Windows, and we're gonna have to see how well the Ally handles Windows, but if it handles it well, this is the first true Steam Deck competitor that I've seen. If the Ally lives up to all of its specs on paper and its software is good and the price is really $700, this is going to be the first true Steam Deck competitor, in my opinion, where, yeah, I think it'll give it a run for its money. And also, just if you're fans of the channel or you watch the channel, I'm going to 100% buy one if it's starting at $700, and I'll run a bunch of tests against my Steam Deck and see which one is better, see which one I like better, and so that you can make a better, more informed buying decision. So if that's something you want to see in the future, then feel free to subscribe so you won't miss those upcoming videos. The main question in my mind is, okay, let's say this thing is really good, but how many consumers have the budget or want to spend a budget of starting at $700 on a gaming device? I know part of why consoles are so popular is because they generally start at like $300 or $400, and so it's a more budget-friendly option, even though the games might be more expensive or you have to pay subscriptions. Like Microsoft and Sony generally lose money on each console sold. That makes them a really budget-friendly gaming option, at least for the start. So it makes me wonder, even if the Ally is super good, is a $700 starting price just too far out of a lot of people's budgets, especially like if you're buying one for your kid or you're buying one, you know, for some family? Maybe that's too expensive. I'm not sure, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that. Let me know what you think. When I'm looking at this, I've been a huge fan of the Steam Deck for as long as it's been around. And this is the first other handheld where I've said to myself, like, whoa, I actually want this one. And I think if I had it, I would use it more than my Steam Deck, because I love my Steam Deck. But if I had better performance, a better screen, a quieter thermal solution, external GPU support, I mean, I could really make this thing my only computer, whereas the Steam Deck just doesn't have quite enough grunt to be my only computer, as I do kind of a lot of video editing. All right, we'll leave things there, but yeah, I'm really curious to know what you guys are thinking about the ROG Ally. Do you think it's gonna be really good? Are you gonna go buy one? Would you rather have that versus a Steam Deck? Do you already have a Steam Deck and you're still going to buy one because you're a weirdo like me? What are you guys thinking about the ROG Ally? I think this could be big, but I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments below. All right, we'll leave the video there. See you guys in the next one. Peace.